Today we're going to talk about adding fractions. Steps to add fractions. Stack the fractions. Look at the fractions. Do they have the same denominators? If they do not, find the common denominator, add the numerators, make sure you keep the denominators the same. Add the whole numbers if they have any, and reduce your answer if you're able. Leave it an improper fraction. Let's try a couple. So I'm going to stack 2/3 and 3/4. 3 and 4 are my denominators. They are not the same, so I want to get a common denominator. 3 and 4 both have 12 in common. To go from 3 to 12, I have to multiply it by 4. Whatever you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. So 2 times 4 is 8. To get from 4 to 12, I have to multiply by 3. Whatever you do to the bottom, you must do to the top. 3 times 3 is 9. Now, step 4 states that I can add my numerators. 8 plus 9 is 17. Keep the denominator the same. This cannot be reduced, so this is your final answer. Let's try the second one. Stack your fractions. Look at your denominators. They are not the same, so you need to find a common denominator. In this case, 6 is your common denominator. So 5, 6 will stay the same, but you need to multiply 3 times 2 to get 6. Whatever you do to the bottom, you must do to the top. 1 times 3 is 3. Step 4, add your numerators, keep your denominators. 5 plus 3 is 8. Keep the denominator of 6. These are both even, so they're both divisible by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 6 divided by 2 is 3. This does not reduce anymore, so that is your final answer. Leave it an improper format. Let's try number 3. You want to stack your fractions. So 1 and 3/5 and 2 and 2/3. You're adding. You want to get your least common denominator between 5 and 3, which is 15. To go from 5 to 15, you must multiply by 3. Whatever you do to the bottom, you must do to the top. 3 times 3 is 9. My new fraction is 1 and 9/15. To go from 3 to 15, you multiply by 5. Whatever you do to the bottom, you must do to the top. 2 times 5 is 10. My new fraction is 2 and 10/15. Step 4 says to add the numerators, keep your denominator. So you get 9 plus 10 is 19 over 15. Add your whole numbers if you have any. 2 plus 1 is 3. This 19/15 is an improper fraction, and you need to take this into account. 15 goes into 19 one time. with 4 remaining. So you need to keep this 4/5 as your fraction, but you need to add your whole numbers together again. 1 plus 3 is 4, and 4/15 as your final answer. Let's try one more. Let's look at number 4. You want to stack your fractions. 4 3/5 plus 3 5/6. 4 plus 3 is 7. And your common denominator between 5 and 6 is 30. To go from 5 to 30, you multiply times 6. Whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. 3 times 6 is 18. 6 times 5 will give me 30. Whatever you do to the bottom, you must do to the top. So 5 times 5 is 25. You want to add your numerators, so you add 18 and 25. This will give you 43. Keep your denominator. 43 over 30 is an improper fraction. You need to simplify that to a mixed number. 30 goes into 43 one time, with 13 remaining. Keep your denominator. Now you need to add the two whole numbers that you have to give you 8 and 13/30 as a final answer. Just a reminder on how to find least common denominators. You want to look at the multiples of your denominators. So for 5 and 6, 5 times 1 is 5, 5 times 2 is 10, 5 times 3 is 15, 5 times 4 is 20, 5 times 5 is 25, 5 times 6 is 30. Go through your 6's. 6 times 1 is 6, times 2 is 12, times 3 is 18, times 4 is 24, times 5 is 30. The first number that they have in common is 30. That's how you can find your common denominator. Pause the video, try 1, 2, 5, and 6. Check your answers when you're done. Check your answers with the following problems. If you have any questions, ask your teacher. Turn the page to subtracting fractions. Steps to subtracting fractions are as follows. Stack the fractions. Look at the fractions. Do they have the same denominators? If not, get a common denominator. Subtract the numerators, keep the denominator. Subtract any whole numbers, if any. Reduce your answer if you're able, and leave an improper fraction. Let's look at an example. 3/5 minus 1/3. They do not have the same denominators, but 5 and 3 have 15 in common. To go from 5 to 15, you have to multiply by 3. What you do to the bottom, you must do to the top, giving you a new fraction of 9/15. To go from 3 to 15, you multiply by 5. What you do to the bottom, you must do to the top. 1 times 5 is 5. Subtract your numerators to get 4, because 9 minus 5 is 4. Keep your denominator. This you cannot reduce, so circle as your final answer. Example 2. Stack your fractions. 5/7 minus 2/3. 7 and 3 are not the same denominators, so you must find the common denominator. In this case is 21. 7 times 3 gives you 21, so what you do to the bottom, you must do to the top to give you a new fraction of 15 over 21. Vice versa, 3 times 7 will give you 21, so 2 times 7 is 14. Subtract your fractions, subtract your numerator. 15 minus 14 is 1. Keep your denominator of 21. This does not reduce, so circle as your final answer. Let's look below at the odd problems. Stack your fractions. 5/7 minus 7 over 21. They do not have the same denominator, but their common denominator is 21. 7 times 3 is 21. What you do to the bottom, you must do to the top. 5 times 3 is 15. Your second fraction stays the same. 15 minus 7 is 8 over your common denominator of 21. This does not simplify, so circle as your final answer. Problem 3. 5/6 minus 1/3. Stack your fractions. 6 and 3 have a common denominator of 6, so your first fraction remains the same, where your second fraction you need to multiply by 2. 1 times 2 is 2, so now you're subtracting 5/6 minus 2/6. 5 minus 2 is 3. Keep your denominator of 6. These reduce by 3 to give you 1/2. Circle your final answer. Problem 5. 7 and 3/5 minus 2/7. Stack your fractions and get a common denominator. 5 and 7 have a common denominator of 35. Five times 7 is 35. So 3 times 7 is 21. 7 times 5 is 35. So 2 times 5 is 10. 21 minus 10 is 11. Keep your denominator of 35. 7 minus 0 is 7. Circle your, this does not simplify, circle this for your final answer. Problem 7. Instead of writing 3 whole, this is the same as if you had 2 whole and take this denominator, the second denominator you have, and 2 over 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1 whole. So here's 1 whole, here's 2 wholes, which give you 3 wholes. So these are equivalent. Okay, so you subtract 2 and 2 over 2 minus 1/2. You now have common denominators, so you can say 2 minus 0 is 2. 2 minus 1 is 1. Keep your denominator of 2. Pause the video, try the evens, then check your answers. Check your answers with the following problems. If you have any questions, ask your teacher.